Hi, Michelle Glass here. Welcome back to our final episode in Chapter 10. I bet you thought you would never get here, but we're here. Yay! All right, our job for this last video is to look at types of muscle fibers. Now, we've talked about muscle having, different ATP demands, whether it's at rest, whether it's working at moderate level, or whether it's working at peak level. Well, what we'll see is that in your muscle, you have a mixture of different types of muscle fibers, and they are adapted to working at peak level of activity or working at moderate level of activity. So let's get started. First, let's talk about fast fibers. Fast fibers are modified to work best at peak level of activity. So their characteristics let them do that glycolysis and build tension fast, but they're going to fatigue fast too. So fast muscle fibers have a lot of myofibrils, so that's going to allow them to build that tension really quick. They have a lot of glycogen because remember they're limited to everything they can store. But because they're doing primarily glycolysis, they have very few mitochondria. Your slow fibers, on the other hand, are kind of the opposite. They're going to be modified for moderate level of activity. So they're going to take a little bit longer time to build their tension, but they can sustain it for a longer period of time. So in this case, your slow fibers are going to be highly vascularized because remember, they're going to be taking fatty acids and oxygen out of the bloodstream. They're going to be doing aerobic respiration of both fatty acids and glucose, and so they need lots of mitochondria, and they're going to have this special protein, myoglobin, which I've mentioned before. This is a protein that allows the muscle fiber to store oxygen inside the cell because these cells are doing a lot of aerobic respiration. Now, if you were a chicken and you had dark meat and white meat, your white meat would be your fast fibers. Those are the ones that don't have as much vascularization because they're not really taking a lot out of the bloodstream during their activity. They're geared up for the peak level of activity, right? And then your dark meat would be your slow fibers. So these are going to be highly vascularized, full of the myoglobin, storing oxygen, and geared up for aerobic respiration. Now, humans, we have pink meat, right? So we have a mixture of fast and slow fibers. That's somewhat genetically, or that is genetically determined. So you have kind of a window of whether you're more of a sprinter or a marathon runner. And then we also have, and other animals do too, what are called intermediate fibers. And these are going to be like a combination. They're going to have characteristics that adapt them for peak level of activity and characteristics that adapt them for moderate level. Now, my understanding is these are the fibers that you're training. So if you are doing activities that's more that peak level of activity, sprinting hard, lifting heavy weights, sustaining that for a long period of time, then your intermediate fibers are going to look more like your fast fibers. If instead you're doing the slow training, the marathon, the aerobic types of exercises, then your intermediate fibers are going to look more like your slow fibers. If you're doing a combination of activities, if you're doing both peak level and moderate level activities, then your intermediate fibers are going to look kind of like in between both fast and slow. So they're going to have characteristics sort of both. So this is where the training comes into play with changes in our muscle. Now, fibers can change over time. So hypertrophy is talking about increasing your number of myofibrils with increased stimulation. So the more you use it, the more you have, right? So if you're using your muscle, it tells your body that you need to have lots of myofibrils there so that you're gaining strength and able to do the work that you're asking your body to do. So that's hypertrophy. You're not changing your number of muscle fibers, but you're changing the characteristics of your muscle fibers. Now, if you don't use it, you lose it. And this is real serious. This is atrophy. So if you're decreasing your stimulation, you can decrease the size, the tone, and the power of your muscles. And this can become really extreme if you don't have neural stimulation to your muscle. They can atrophy to the point that you cannot recover. So you can basically lose that muscle permanently. And then we do see changes happening in our muscles as we age. The fibers shrink, they become less elastic, but this does depend on activity. So if you're comparing the activity of or the muscle of an active 60-year-old with an inactive 60-year-old, you are going to see some differences there, or even as you go up in age. Okay, and that is it for chapter 10.